All right, it's 8:32 here in Vancouver, and I think we're ready to start our webinar today. Welcome everyone to our ThoughtFarmer FormFlow webinar. It sure is great to see so many of you out here this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. Our presentation today is going to be around 30 minutes. And then at the end of that, we're going to have 15 minutes for questions and answers as well. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation or afterwards, feel free to type them in the questions box in GoToMeeting, and then we'll make sure to address them after the presentation. We will also be recording the session today, and of course we'll make that available on our YouTube channel and on our ThoughtFarmer community site afterwards. So stay tuned for that in the next few days. All right, now before we'll start it, I'll quickly do some introductions. My name's Caroline. I lead our customer success and support team here at ThoughtFarmer. And Darren, of course, the gentleman next to me here on the slide, is our president and founder. And Darren has worked very closely with the team on the creation of FormFlow today. Which we're really excited to introduce this morning. ThoughtFarmer FormFlow is a new addition to ThoughtFarmer. We've been quietly working on this for at least the last year, so we're very excited to formally introduce it to everybody this morning. And with that, I'm just going to hand it over to Darren and let him tell you all about it.
Thanks, Caroline. So before I jump into the demo, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the process of how we built this feature. We actually started, so we've been actively working on this for over a year now, but we actually started doing a lot of research on this a few years back at our last Thought Summit. We actually reached out to our customers that were attending as well too, really to get an understanding of how organizations were using forms and workflow on their intranets today. We collected a whole bunch of forms, we reviewed them, and out of that process, we identified two main use cases and how people used forms and fielded data. The first one would be the traditional type of form, something like this that you'd see on an intranet. So this would be an HR form. Basically what we're looking at here is a form that somebody could use to submit some information to HR. So basically this would be available to probably just about anybody in the company. Large number of people have access to this form. They could fill out this information, click submit, and it's going to go to one or two people in HR. This would be the traditional approach for these types of things. Another example would be something like this, would be an online purchase requisition. So you can see here, same kind of idea, a few different types of fields. This information is being collected. Somebody's putting an order for an item here. It's going to go to some type of purchasing manager to take and to work with. So we wanted to support these types of forms that are geared around collecting data. And here's just a preview here of how we can actually accomplish this in ThoughtFarmer. So we have it as part of FormFlow. It's this new feature, this new add-on that allows you to design your own forms and embed them into your pages within ThoughtFarmer. So it makes it great for collecting data and managing that internally. Now, another use case that we identified was around collecting lists for the intranet. So in this case here, in a lot of organizations, they're using SharePoint for this. So SharePoint lists is a really common use case. So you can see here, the form here is going to be managed probably by a limited number of people. So this is an example of an employee database. You can see a list of orders here, when the order was received and when it was shipped. So working with lists on the internet was something that we saw as a common use case for intranets and working with forms and fielded data. So we wanted to try to be able to manage the same type of approach here as well in ThoughtFarmer, with the ability to take lists and to be able to publish them onto the intranet. So you can see here, this is an example of ThoughtFarmer FormFlow, how we're actually publishing that list there on the intranet. So forms for collecting data is one main use case that we saw, and the second one that we saw was forms for publishing data and maintaining that information. The other thing that we saw quite a bit of was this idea of workflow, in that we saw forms that were being submitted. There was some kind of a multi-step or approval process. And so you can see here as an example of, this is a paper-based form. So you can see here as an example of a form that was published there on the intranet that allowed people to be able to request for professional development. So this is a law firm here. You can see the lawyer name at the top, the description of the course that they're hoping to get access to. But at the bottom of the form, you'll notice there's a department head approval step and a practice group approval step. So with ThoughtFarmer FormFlow, we wanted to make sure that we could handle these types of forms where the information is going to get processed, the information is going to get reviewed, maybe some additional fields are going to get filled out through that process there as well too. So when we talk about workflow, that's what we mean. So as part of this, we also just reviewed the available workflow tools that are out there. There's a lot of really complicated workflow products, but we wanted to have something that kept things simple, because that workflow can be really complex. So what we wanted to try to be able to do was ensure that our workflows always have, we want to know key things for all those workflows. Every workflow has a start, it has a middle, and it has an end. And there's a single starting point for all statuses, e.g. submitted or entered. That's where they first were created. In the middle, there's intermediate steps, such as in progress or under review. And in the end, there's the final step in the process, such as completed or canceled. Now, with the workflow, we want to always be able to track what is the status of each request? Who has it been assigned to? And how long has it been in process? So when you set up your workflow, you have the option of setting a target time to complete. So entries that exceed this time will be highlighted, they'll be flagged within the system. There'll be a report that gets generated, and you'll be able to see those entries that have been taking too long. The process of changing a state, going from one state to the next, it's a manual process. So this makes it really easy to, if you need to skip a step or if you need to go backwards in the process, that changing the state can be done very easily. At any point, an entry can be assigned to a person for follow-up or review. And throughout the whole process, there'll be email and in-app notifications that are sent on form submission and assignment. So I'm going to jump over to the live demo now. So here we see a sample intranet here. It's for a fictitious company, Pacific Credit Union. And from here, so it's just a standard intranet that's been set up. It looks more or less like the ThoughtFarmer that you're familiar with. But if I click over here in the top corner, you'll notice there's a new option here that says Forms. So I'm going to click through to Forms. And from here, I can see all the forms that I have access to be able to submit to. So these were forms that were previously created by somebody else. So I'm going to go through the process here of adding a new form. So in our for our example here, I'm going to use the process of creating a new business card request. So oftentimes people need a new business card. So this would be a form that you could create and embed on your intranet. So I'm going to save that form. And now I'm into the form builder. And from here, if you've ever used a form builder before, like Wufoo, a lot of the same approach is going to be here as well too. So I can just drag and drop this information into here. Name. I have other field types here available to me as well, such as drop-down lists. And larger paragraph fields. So if you've worked with a form builder before, a lot of what you see here is going to be very similar. At any step in the process here, I can preview my form, get to see how it's going to look. That's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to launch this form. Now, when I first create a form, you'll notice that it's in draft mode. Nobody's going to be able to submit any entries to it. But if I want people to be able to submit entries, I can just go ahead, click launch. And now it'll be available on this forms page for anybody in the company to come along and submit a business card request. So from here, so now I've created in the forms section, but I want to go back to my intranet now, and I want to actually embed this form on a page somewhere. So I'm going to browse over to the HR department. I can see there's a tools here. I'm going to create a new page here for business card request. So this is just the standard add new page. So if you're familiar with ThoughtFarmer, this all looks quite familiar. But there's a new content type option down here called form. So if I choose this form, I can search for that business card request form that I just created. I can add it here to the page. And you'll see here, I got a preview of how this form is going to look. This all looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to publish this form. And there it is. There's that form. It's live. It's available there on the intranet. And anybody can come along and publish to it. So I'm going to show you here just what that process looks like if people are going to submit a form. So I'm going to jump over. I've got another browser window open here. And on this browser, you'll notice I'm logged in as Caroline. So I just want to show you the process of what it would look like from another user. So I'm going to navigate back here to Departments, to Human Resources. I can see here under the tools, I can see this new business card request form. So I am Caroline. I'm going to fill this out. So you'll notice here some of the fields have the optional validation steps. So I didn't put a proper email address in here for Caroline, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that. And that submission has gone through. So I'm going to jump back to my window, and I just want to show where that information goes. So I'm back here. I'm back logged in as myself again. And I'm going to go back to the forms. So from here, you'll notice there's another tab here at the top which says entries. So every time somebody submits an entry to a form, it's going to show up in this entries tab. So I can see right here, there it is right there, business card request, assigned to me, submitted by Caroline. I can click into it and I can see all that information that was sent there. But we haven't set up any type of workflow for this form yet. Maybe I want to bring in the design team or the printing department. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to customize. I'm going to set up her form a little bit further. So I'm going to go back here to business card request. I'm going to edit this form. So you'll notice here that when the form is launched, I can no longer customize the fields that are associated with it. That's because it's available for other people to submit. If I did want to change these fields, I would need to close the form. So I'm going to go here under workflow. I'm going to add a few more steps. So any of these steps here, I can drag and drop and change the order of them. Now that I've added some workflow steps into here, you'll notice that it's also giving me the option here to set a time for this. So I can say, I want this to be completed within 10 days. I don't want these to be lagging around. The next tab over is messaging. So on the messaging tab, this is where I can change some of the display options there. So you remember when I submitted that form, it said, thanks for your submission. If I wanted to change any of the text, I could go ahead and customize it here. And the last tab here is the permissions tab. And permissions is where we define the security roles around that form. So with forms, it's slightly different but similar, but it builds on some of the concepts of the security model in ThoughtFarmer. So in this case here, I can define, there's 4 main roles: submitters, reviewers, viewers, and form managers. And from here, I can define, okay, these are the people that can submit the form. So I can see here all registered users. So it's basically anybody in the company is going to be able to submit to the form. I can add some additional restrictions here. I can control whether or not they can edit their form entries. I can limit the number of times a person could submit the form, or I can limit the maximum number of submissions for the form. The reviewers are the people that can review and approve the form entries. So initially, it's going to get assigned to me, but I can go here. I can add additional reviewers if I want to as well. I also have the ability to flag the submitter's manager as a reviewer. So if the first step in the process needs to go to that person's manager, you can use that as an option here as well too. The manager, we know that from the employee directory in ThoughtFarmer. So whoever that person is set to report to from their employee profile will automatically be included in the workflow process. Viewers are people that can view the entries, but they can't edit or submit or approve them. And then finally, form managers are those that can actually edit and manage the form. So now that I've added a little bit more options there to that form, I'm going to go back to the entries tab. I'm going to pull up this entry again. And so from here, if I wanted to, I could go in here, I could change her phone number. If I noticed there was an error that was on it, I can go in here, I can edit this information. And I can also go through here and I can change those workflow statuses. So if you remember those workflow steps that we created earlier, I'm happy with this. I don't think it needs to go to further review. So I'm going to go ahead and I can assign it to Sophia to design the business card. On any of these entries, I can make notes. So I can make a comment in here. It's over to you, Sophia. And those comments will move along with that entry there. I can also, if I want to add private notes that only reviewers can see. So if I didn't want Caroline to see the information, I could make a private note here as well too. So I could say, and this is only going to be visible for reviewers. Every time I make a change here on an entry, everything is automatically logged. And you can see here, there's under the activity tab, we have a full detailed audit log for all the information that's been submitted on this entry here. So I can see Caroline submitted it, and you can see here all the changes that I just made recently. I updated it, I assigned it, I changed the status, I added a note. And if I can even go in here for when I update the entries, I actually have a detailed change log of every single change at the field level that was made to this form. So it makes it very easy to track over time what's been added, removed, and modified throughout this process. So that's the use case around the building forms that are meant to be forms for collecting data and for that workflow. Another common use case that we saw was that list use case. So I'm going to go here. I'm just going to search for the contractor database. So this is a form that that's already been set up in the system here. If I take a look at it, if I edit that form, you'll notice here the fields that we're collecting is a headshot, name, email address, website. So what we're trying to build here is a database of approved contractors that we can publish on the intranet, that anybody in the company, if they're looking for somebody with a specific set of skills, they could come and review this database. It's kind of like a little mini CRM, little mini contact manager here. So I've got that information about the fields, and I can see that there's already some entries that have been created for it. So you can see here, these are already been submitted by previous users. So now I want to take this form and I want to go ahead and I want to publish it onto the intranet. So I'm going to go back here to the HR department there. And I'm going to go under human resources. And I add a new page here. So same as before, I'm going to choose a form. And I'm going to search for that contractor database, link it up to this page. And so from here, you'll notice I've got this layout options. Now, previously, I chose form. So if I left it as form here, this would be a form that would display on this page. But instead, I'm going to choose entries in a list because we're working on that use case where we're publishing this fielded information to the intranet. So from here, I'm going to choose the fields that I want to display. Okay, this is all looking pretty good. So now I've published that list and it's available here on the intranet. So anybody that comes to this page here, they're going to be able to see that information. If they want to actually, what's great here as well too is when we publish these lists, we automatically bring in this faceted search on the left-hand side here. So I can come in here, if I'm looking for somebody in particular, I can just search for their name and I'm going to see that the information for that person. If I click through, I'll see the fielded information for the headshot there, or I can actually just view the record itself, see all the information that we have for John. If I want to make a change here, I can click view details, and it takes me back into the form entry interface here where I can edit this, update that information. But the list view that we have here is for something like this, we have the headshot. It's maybe not the as attractive way of viewing it. So we do have other view options here for this information. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to edit this form. I'm going to choose to view the entries in a grid view. And when I do that, you'll see I get a couple of different options that are shown here as well. So I can change, show the label here. If I want to change the size or display, I've got some customization options that are here. I'm going to show the label for these. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to save it. And so now you see this information is being shown in a list view, which is a much more visual and a better way to display this information. And again, I still have the same filtering options that are available to me over here on the left-hand side. If I want to go in and drill down, search for a specific email address, or I can actually come here and just search for areas of expertise. So if I'm looking for, say, a web designer, I can choose web designer. I'll see the 4 web designers here. I can even filter further and say, okay, I want to see web designers that are based in the UK, and that's Emma. And from here, I can go to her website. I can send her an email address. I found what I'm looking for there. So that's the example of how lists in ThoughtFarmer work and how we can easily build out those fields and publish them onto the internet. I'm going to just do quickly here. I'm going to run through some of the other more advanced features that we have there in the forms there. We wanted to try to be able to support as many different business cases or use cases as possible here. So here from the edit screen here, I'm going to go ahead. If you remember this form here, one of the things we had here was this option here to choose other as a location. And if I had another location, I could go ahead and type it into the box. But for those that actually use one of these addresses here, we really don't need them to type in that location there. So something we can do here, I can close this form. Now I have the ability to modify it. I'm going to change this this location field. I'm going to add some business logic into here. So I'm going to edit this form. You'll notice here there's this add logic link here. I'm going to click it. I'm going to say if selected, I want to show the field other location. So what this means is if somebody chooses the other dropdown, it's going to show this other location field. And the form's smart enough to know to hide it by default. So if I go in here now and choose preview, you'll notice here my form looks a lot cleaner. It no longer shows that other box there. But if I go into the dropdown here and choose it, sure enough, there it appears. So that's how you can use some business logic on your form there in order to be able to clean up and simplify your form. There's some other great things here you can do as well too with that. if you want to, you can go through. I'll show you an example here of another form where we've used that same hide show logic just to make things a little bit easier. So I'm going to head over here to the leave request form. So you'll notice here under the type of leave, there's a couple of different options here that are available. Some other different options that are available there. Let me show you this in the admin here. I'm going to jump to another, this form here. So I remembered what I meant to show you here now. So on this form here, the leave request, yes, this is my mistake. All right. So on this form here, what I wanted to show you on this form was there are some manager notes that are associated with this form. So in this case here, we've got a form where the user is going to be coming through. They're going to be submitting the information. There's going to be a leave start date and an end date. And once they've chosen their information, it's going to be routed to the manager for additional information that they can then submit to it. So I'm going to go back to my form there and show you how this works here. Actually, I'm going to go through as Caroline. So I'm back logged in as Caroline now. All right, I closed that form, so I need to open it again. Or I need to launch it again. Okay, now my form is launched. I am back as Caroline, and so if I come into here and put in a request, so I've submitted that leave request. I'm going to switch back to my account. So you'll notice here now when I go into the entries for this, the entries view, if I view this leave request, I'll see some additional information here around manager notes. So if I want to, I can come in here, I can add some additional information for her. And I can go ahead and save that. We can change the status of this form under review, approved, what have you. So that gives you an example of how oftentimes you'll see forms where it says for admin use only. We want to be able to support that use case in ThoughtFarmer. All right. So next, I'm going to quickly show you here just a few more forms. I'm going to go to the hardware request form. And here's where I wanted to show the that conditional logic here. So from here, I can choose, depending on which option I ask for here, you can see here there's different information that's being added. So there's a hardware purchase request. I can see whether it's a new, repair, or replacement. I can see this device type down here, mobile phone, laptop, or printer. And depending on which choice I make here, the rest of the form is showing or hiding additional information, additional questions for that form. So depending on your use case, you can really build like a nice streamlined form. And last that I want to show here is the one of the things we noticed, we discovered as we worked through our forms is oftentimes you need to have some flexibility on your form. It's not just a simple list of fields that you need to collect. Sometimes you need to have the ability to add multiple rows or multiple entries. So this is an example here of a benefit enrollment. So a new employee that's starting within the company. You can see the employee name here, date of birth, relationship status, and home address. Down here, you'll see a table here that says dependents. First name, last name, relation, date of birth, and personal health number. So from here, you can easily, if I need to add spouse, I can go through here and I can add multiple rows of data into here. So again, in the form builder, you have the ability to define these tables of information, and you can allow people to submit as many rows as they need on that form. So it makes it much more streamlined when you're dealing with more complex types of forms. So those are the three, those are some of the extra options there that are available in ThoughtFarmer FormFlow. I'm going to jump back to the presentation here. The common question that we get is when is it going to be available and how much is it going to cost? So ThoughtFarmer FormFlow, it's an add-on for ThoughtFarmer 9, and it has user and server-based pricing. So if you are running ThoughtFarmer on-premise inside your office, there is an additional cost there depending on whether you're using a user or server-based license. But cloud customers will receive FormFlow at no additional cost. If you're interested in finding out more about the pricing, please contact sales@thoughtfarmer.com. So the next question is ThoughtFarmer 9. When is that coming out? It's going to be available at the end of October 2018. So next month, we'll be releasing ThoughtFarmer 9 along with the FormFlow add-on. ThoughtFarmer 9 is a free upgrade for all customers. It includes a number of new features such as Microsoft Office 365 integration, Google Drive integration. It includes support for a new analytics interface that we're launching in the next quarter. It includes inline help, improved tag management, and a number of different back-end enhancements as well, such as faster page generation, quicker downloads, improved service management. These are the services that ThoughtFarmer uses on the server, as well as an enhanced API for those of you that are using our extensions. If you have any questions about that, we're going to have a series of more webinars about these features that are launching as part of ThoughtFarmer 9. Please continue to watch our website, the community site, and our mailing list for more information. And feel free to get in touch, engage at thoughtfarmer.com or through our website, through the support channels, all the usual methods. Please reach out.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Darren. So yeah, that was our little overview of FormFlow. We have a bit of time left here, about 10 minutes. If any of you have any questions, again, feel free to type them into the question box that you have there on GoToMeeting, and we'll be happy to answer them. I already see a few amazing, I love it, this looks great coming in, so that's always good to hear. So yeah, keep those questions coming. We have a few in here already. So Darren, one question that comes up here is, does FormFlow have an API? Meaning, can it be integrated to push or pull information from other systems or into other systems?
Currently with version 9 of ThoughtFarmer, there is an API. We have not released the public API for it and the documentation, but that's something that we're hoping to add in the future. We are looking, there is the ability to export data in and out of FormFlow. So if you need to have access to that information, it's very easy to download. Let me just show you quickly here. If I go back to that contractor database. So up here in the corner, I have this download link, and from here I can download the form entries. I can download them in either Excel or Word format. and I can download only the form fields that are shown on this screen, or I can show all the fields that we're tracking for this information. So very easy to pull the information out of FormFlow. As well, you can also export the form definition. So if we're going to be producing some sample forms, make them available on our website, and you'll be able to download those and import those into your intranet very easily.
Great, thanks, Darren. That actually answered somebody else's questions about exporting data, so that was perfect. All right, just another question that came in here. Do you have plans to build out more advanced workflow as well, like more advanced options?
Yeah, so that was one of the things that we looked at when we were designing the workflow tool, was actually building some kind of a visual workflow tool with multiple branching options and some more complex business rules. We're definitely open to that. We wanted to really launch the product with the simple workflow first. I think for a lot of use cases, the simple workflow works really well. And we wanted to get that out there into the hands of our customers, see how they're actually working with it, and then customize, see if there's a need for that, and we can look into add that in the future. Something we're also looking at as well, we've been running an extended beta period, and through that process, we've identified some need for new additional fields. So those are some of the things that we're working on right now. So shortly after in our subsequent releases of FormFlow, we'll be adding additional fields and really looking to see how we can handle more use cases. I think when everybody sees this, they start coming to us with all sorts of really great and amazing ideas. So we love to hear that.
Great. This is a good question, a practical one. How hard will it be to upgrade our ThoughtFarmer site to get us onto FormFlow?
Yeah, so with FormFlow, it is based on the new version of, it does require ThoughtFarmer version 9. Overall, the upgrade process is fairly straightforward. If you are running, if you have a number of custom enhancements on your site, we'll have to evaluate those. As part of the back-end improvements that we made to ThoughtFarmer 9, we're running on the latest version of the technology frameworks that we use. And as part of that, some of those back-end customizations may need to be modified. So if you are interested in upgrading to ThoughtFarmer 9 as soon as it is available, I recommend that you reach out to our support team, and we can help evaluate to see if those the ThoughtFarmer plugins that you are running and custom cards that you're running currently are going to be able to transfer smoothly over to ThoughtFarmer 9, or as if there might need to be some updates that are required there.
Great. Someone's asking here, what happens if I edit or delete a field on a form when it's already live? Does that mess up the data that I've already collected from that form?
Nope. We've tried to make it as easy as possible. We recognize that forms, especially, they kind of will they'll grow with new fields being added and removed over time. So if you find yourself in that situation where you're managing a form, adding new fields or deleting fields, the system is flexible enough to be able to track that. We try to preserve your data as much as possible. So if you had a form that had, say, 10 fields on it, you ran that for 3 or 4 months, collected a bunch of data for it, and then deleted one of those fields, and then added additional ones, that previous historic information will still be there for you to work with. It just won't show up for new users of that form.
Great. And specific questions here around different ways to use FormFlow. Ryan's asking here, I could see this being used for idea management. Is there a way to use the workflows and generate lists with the same form?
Yes, you can actually. So if you take a look here, something that is quite useful is with the lists use case is you can actually define you can actually create multiple, what we call views on that list. And a view is just basically a saved search. So if I go back into the entries, and come in, I'm going to take a look at the contractor database. And I want to, and if I want to define a new view in here, which are based on only the entries that are flagged as final, for example, You can see here I've got the form contractor database and the status is final. I can save this as a view. I'm going to save this with all. So now when I go back to that form, I can go into here and I can actually define it to only show, to only display those specific the specific views that are associated with that. So I'm going to choose back here to final. And now when I save it, I'm going to get a filtered list there that's automatic, that's already there. So if I'm using this for idea management, you could have, say, a screen that anybody can submit to that would say, hey, here's like the ideas that we're thinking about, post your idea here, and we're just going to show like the in-process list, and then have another page where we can say, okay, here's our final approved idea page there as well too. So that's a great question.
All right, and one last question here for now from one of our customers who's in the education sector. If our enrollment processor adds a new student application essay to be approved, will we have the option to review the application, grade it, and return it back to admissions all online? That's a bit of a one to think through, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we'd have to follow up with you more on that from a use case perspective. But I mean, ultimately, I don't see why that would not work. We do have the ability, one of the fields there that we have within forms is upload. So if I go back here under forms, and if I add a form, one of the fields you'll see here is a file upload. So if you have, you could define a form here that has a number of different questions there about the student application, an upload field for that, the application itself, which would presumably be either PDF or Word document, and then potentially some additional administration only fields for them to actually make comments and to actually discuss the process. You could track that whole process that way there as well too, and use the workflow status to define submitted, under review, approved, or denied. So.
Great. Thanks so much, Darren. Those are all of the questions that we had here today in the webinar. Again, if you think of any other questions on anything FormFlow later on, like Darren said, feel free to get in touch. We'll be happily answering those for you as well. But I think that's it for us today, and I think we can wrap up now. Again, we are recording the session, so check our community site or our YouTube channel in the next few days. If you wanted to share with any others in your organization, you'll find a full recording of the webinar today there. That's it for us in Vancouver. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.